Hello and welcome to the CUFI UK podcast for Zion's sake. My name is Alastair, this is Alex.
Hello.
And we're grateful that you can join us for this latest podcast. And today we're going to be covering some subjects, Alex, that are perhaps lesser known, perhaps not in the mainstream media. We thought we would cover these because they are important indicators, we feel, having discussed earlier, of the climate that we are currently living in regards to anti-Semitism. And many of our stories are from here in the UK.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be focusing on some lesser known stories where individuals are affected by what's going on in Israel, either through discrimination, anti-Semitism, things like that. I think it just shows the climate that the UK is in, that many countries in the world are in, where there is this, this battle going on politically, spiritually, and all the rest of it around Israel. It's amazing, actually, how much the conflict between Israel and Hamas is affecting people around the world, actually. So
let's begin then with the first story.
Yep.
This happened in Bedfordshire, here in the UK, and it was an under-8s football match, a grassroots football match, where the opposing team, I'll mention the two teams, it was the Wixham's Wanderers, I should say, so Wixham's Wanderers versus Queen's Park Crescents. Now, Queen's Park Crescents were hosting the match, and when the Wixham's Wanderers arrived, there had been placed in the corners of the pitch, the corner flags were, wait for it, Palestinian flags. Now, there was a parent that was on the visiting team, the Wixons, who objected to this and asked, if the flags could be replaced.
Yeah.
But they objected, and actually, Queen's Park Crescents, the coaches initially removed them, and then someone else at the club then reinstated them.
Yeah.
And they said what was actually not true. They said that the FA had granted permission. The FA have clarified that they did not give any authorization for Palestinian flags. It was done without their consent, and the parent that raised the concern was Jewish.
Yeah.
He was Israeli. And can you imagine how these 8-year-olds, particularly under 8s,
small children,
and particularly this Jewish 8-year-old would have felt having those Palestinian flags there.
Yeah.
And a wonderful thing, actually, a really positive thing to come out of this story is that because of the offense that this one family, this Jewish family, had taken, the entire team, who were not Jewish, the rest of the team, all the parents withdrew from the match and went home because they wanted to stand with this Jewish family.
Yeah, I think that's a very positive thing to come out of this, and it shows, that's the way it should be. People should be sticking up for each other like this. If one person's offended, then, everyone walks out together. That's what a team does.
Yeah.
But it is just a shame that the opposing team decided that they would put politics above, children playing sports together. Like, sports is meant to be a neutral place. Obviously, we know that the FA itself has politicized football in various different ways, which, you can agree with or not agree with. I personally think it should be a neutral place where you don't have any politics at all. And so, I think, even thinking back actually with the FA, they have in the past put political signs up, for example, over Wembley Stadium, and yet they refused to do it for the 7th of October massacres. And so they have actually taken a stance on this, which I don't think is necessarily the right stance. But since that time, they've actually said, well, we're not going to be putting political messages on there. And they've tried to take away some of those political messages. But I think they already set that precedent. And I think the inspiration for this probably came from seeing, for example, there's been rainbow flags on the corner flags within, Premiership games and things like that. So you probably find they got the inspiration from that.
So the idea, the precedent in that sense, which was obviously an FA endorsed thing.
Yeah.
But this football club, they are the Queen's Park Crescents actually rebranded their badge last year to incorporate the Palestinian flag.
Yeah.
So as a club, they have taken that politicized view. But can I just say what the father said of the parent? I'm the only Jew or Israeli on the team. The rest of the team were 100% supportive as soon as they realized it had become political. All of the families backed me and we walked away. If one person doesn't feel comfortable, we don't play. There is no way there is any room for this in an under-8s game. Kids should not be used as a political tool. They've used this as a means for propaganda. 19 kids came here for an under-8s game and they went home without playing because the other side insisted on using Palestinian flags. It's terrible. And the father continued to say that he tried to shield his son from the news, but he understands that there's a war in Israel and why we had to leave the game. He's only 8, he said, and he can see this is not okay. And another parent who's not Jewish wrote on Facebook, "My heart is bleeding. Why were we allowing an under-8s grassroots football game to become a political campaign?" Now, the team which hosted have doubled down on it. They are proud that they are having Palestinian flags on their pitch, but the FA, I think, is currently looking into it and telling them not to. But that's just one example. Well, on the subject of children, there's another case of a Jewish child that was discriminated against here in the UK at an NHS hospital in Manchester.
Yeah.
Do you want to just explain the situation?
Yeah, so this story was actually brought to public attention by Rachel Riley, who's a celebrity here in the UK. She's one of the hosts of Countdown. And I think it's probably easier if I just read this thing. It's actually a letter written by an uncle who's talking about his nephew in Manchester and how a visibly Jewish child was discriminated against by nurses wearing Palestinian flags. So he says, I'll read the whole thing. There is no excuse for this, none at all. It has been on my mind for a few weeks now to write about the thoughts and feelings I and probably many others in Israel have been feeling with the new normal in Israel. Instead, something happened today that made my blood boil and bothers me more than anything else I could have written about. For those of you who know me, I'm originally from the UK and my whole family lives here still. One of my nephews is 9 years old, living in Manchester. He has a rare blood disorder, which he has been dealing with most of his life. This illness means that he needs to have a blood transfusion every month or two, and he spends, alongside his mother and my sister, many days and hours in hospital. Today, he is at Royal Manchester Children's Hospital. As a religious Jewish family, my nephew wears his black kippah, yarmulke, religious hat, whatever you want to call it, and his tzitzit proudly. Not today. Why, you ask? The nurses, in brackets NHS employees, were all walking around wearing Free Palestine pins, and he was scared. Before that, the last few times he went in, he was denied correct medical care by the same couple of nurses every time. This culminated the last time he went in, when my visibly Jewish 9-year-old nephew with an autoimmune blood disease was kicked out of his bay by one of the nurses who was covered in pro-Palestine badges and stickers, and due to that had to lie on the floor with a cannula in. And just to clarify, there is a picture of him sitting on the floor with visibly Jewish attire and a cannula in him. So it says, now the damage is done, and my proudly Jewish nephew and his parents are scared to not get treatment if he wears a kippah and tzitzit. Coincidentally, today, when not visibly Jewish, he received quick care. Also worth noting, prior to the conflict, he received excellent care.
And that just shows you the discrimination right there. I mean, that is an appalling thing for any Jewish person, a Jewish child, to have to experience in an NHS hospital.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Rachel Riley has taken it upon herself to try and get to the bottom of this and called for an investigation into it. But if this hadn't been posted on Twitter, we would not have even known that this was happening.
Exactly. And I think I mean, just to clarify as well, like the pictures that were shared, there's one of him where he is visibly Jewish and he is on the floor with a cannula in him. There's one of him where he's just wearing a Manchester United shirt, doesn't look visibly Jewish, and he's on a bed being treated properly. So they're showing the disparity between.
And in my opinion, nurses should not be allowed to wear a Palestinian flag lapel pin. Anyway, I mean, aside from the discrimination, which is terrible, I just don't think that should be allowed. I'd be surprised if it was allowed, but he said nurses, plural, were walking around wearing them. That needs looking into.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, hospitals should be places that are neutral.
And safe.
And safe for everyone, because you have people in there from all walks of life, all political persuasions, all religious backgrounds, everything. They should be neutral. And just think about this from the parents' perspective. Like, I mean, you know, I've got children. I've had to take them to hospital and have treatment for different things. And there's times where maybe they haven't got the correct treatment because of whatever reason. And actually, as a parent, it's like, it's very, not traumatic, but it is sort of, you're deeply concerned that your child is not getting the correct care. Just think about these parents. They're going to be there thinking, are these nurses actually going to help my child? Could they damage my child? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like, just think of it from the parents' perspective, like protecting their child. If you can't trust the doctors and nurses and the NHS to give your child correct treatment, that is disgraceful. That, in my opinion, that's criminal.
Well, actually, if he's receiving treatment sitting on a floor, because of the discrimination, then that actually isn't correct treatment.
No, I mean, if that was me, I would have been kicking up a storm. You can imagine.
Yes.
So I would not have stood for that in any way. But that it's another example of discrimination. And again, these are adults dealing with children. Same with the football coaches dealing with children. It's like, come on, guys, you know, don't involve children in your politics. But unfortunately, I just think there is so much hatred against Israel that, you know, people are losing their minds about it, and they lose their humanity as well. I think.
Well, this is an example of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And we cannot allow it to be normalized.
No.
This has to be investigated with urgency. And every Jewish individual that goes into a hospital to receive care and receive treatment, and of course, those are very serious situations if you require treatment. This young boy has a rare blood disorder. Then, you know, they should be able to feel safe just as anybody else should be able to feel safe. It is a very worrying indicator, because actually, if there is a mistreatment that has been demonstrated in this way, you know, there could be even more and actually quite serious forms of mistreatment, which could be to a far greater degree than just being denied a bed, though that is terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has to be nipped in the bud.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying there is it's even more troubling, because we know there are people in this country who support Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization that is genocidal, that is anti-Semitic. Hamas's leaders have called for their supporters worldwide to murder Jews, right? That is a dangerous thing. If there is a nurse in a position where they can inflict damage to a Jewish person because they literally believe the Hamas, you know, if they literally share the ideology of Hamas, I think what you're saying there is deeply troubling, deeply concerning. Because yes, these nurses could just be, well, we'll just be a nuisance to him because, you know, and the family because they're Jewish, and they're showing their anti-Semitism in that way. But just think of how dark that could get if the wrong person has that motive. Yeah. I mean, it's terrible to think about.
Another example of being able to express Jewish identity is perhaps a good illustration is a tweet which Colonel Richard Kemp shared this week of a friend of his who he was with at the time wearing a Bring Them Home wristband. Bring Them Home wristband in support for calling for the release of the hostages, Israeli hostages. Now, do you want to just explain what took place in that situation, which actually I think is just an eye-opener into how many Jewish people might be feeling at this time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, normally we go to Colonel Richard Kemp when we want some insight into the military and things like that. But in this case, it's, anti-Semitism here at home. And so I'll read his tweet. He said, "Shame on Great Britain. Today I was in a cafe in central London. A middle-aged woman noticed my friend's yellow bring them home wristband. Looking warily left and right, she discreetly revealed her hidden Star of David necklace and tearfully told us how hard it is for Jews in London. To repeat, this is our capital city in 2024, not the Nazi capital in the 1930s. We should be doing whatever we can to stand with Jews against Hamas's bullying henchmen that prowl our streets." And that just shows, again, this is another example.
Well, I think it links,
100%,
doesn't it? Because what you will find is that more Jewish people will feel inclined to hide the Jewish identity, like that little boy felt the need to do, to hide it, and because of the fear of repercussions. Yeah, that's exactly what that lady has said. That is a terrible situation.
I know it is. It is wrong, and our nation needs to wake up to this. Yeah. Christians in this country need to wake up to this. Jews right now are living in fear of being Jewish in Britain.
Yes.
That is such a shameful thing to say, but it is reality.
Well, that's
such a shameful reality.
It's a shameful reality, and it's actually shameful to deny that's a reality as well, because there are people who are saying, well, no, that's not true. It's not true. There's no place where you can. Well, no, there is.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to make the message loud and clear that we do stand with the Jewish community. We understand the worries. We understand the worries of that lady, but it shouldn't have to be like that.
No.
Now we have something that perhaps it links quite nicely to that, making a visible stand.
Yeah.
It is a wristband which says Israel lives.
Yep. You can see me and Alastair wearing them.
Wristband lives. This
wristband lives. Israel lives.
Sorry, Israel lives. Yeah. This wristband is available. We'd be glad to send it to you as a thank you for any donation that is made to CUFI UK. Yep. Please visit the link which is on screen and also in the description. And with any donation, we would be glad to send this wristband. But you must go to the actual link that is provided so that we know that you would like one of these wristbands.
Yep.
It goes towards the work of Christians United for Israel, helping us here in Britain to make a stand. Well, one of the many things is to make a stand against anti-Semitism.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, we hope you will like that. It's actually an indented Israel lives, so it isn't actually.
There's no colour on it.
There's no colour. But I think the most important thing for me about this wristband, it isn't necessarily showing it around. It's a reminder to me personally of the importance of Israel, what Israel means to me, what Israel means to God, and to stand in solidarity as a personal expression.
Yeah, it's actually kind of it's almost like a defiance thing for me. Like, it's like, okay, like even me, I'm not necessarily going to be walking around waving a big Israel flag and shouting Israel lives from the top of my lungs, but actually having a little wristband on there as a personal reminder, as a personal little bit of defiance, because it is quite discreet. Like you probably can't even see on the camera that it says Israel lives. I'll try to shine it towards the light, so it's very discreet. But if someone says to you, if you're at church wearing one of these and someone says to you, "Oh, what wristband? What does that say?" and you can say Israel lives, and it might start a conversation. It's not like a big broad way of showing your support for Israel, but it's sort of a more discreet way of showing it. And also, as Alastair said, any donation that is made to get one of these helps us to combat anti-Semitism here in the UK.
Yes.
And that's what we're about.
Yeah. Now we're going to move on to the Eurovision. And for anyone that is not familiar with the Eurovision Song Contest, for example, I don't know if there's people listening, watching from North America. Alex is going to explain everything about what the Eurovision is. So thank you, Alex. But no, the Eurovision Song Contest, let's get straight to the point.
Yep.
This is taking place in May.
Yep.
It is being hosted this year by Sweden, who were the winners of last year's Eurovision. Countries from around Europe, plus Australia, and including Israel, are participating in the song contest, nominating a representative from each country.
Yep.
And Israel, probably, sadly, unsurprisingly, there has been a kickback about Israel's participation. Again, it should not be the case. It was Belgium that Belgium's culture minister who has called for Israel to be banned from Eurovision. There have been others as well in the media who have called for Israel's exclusion. Why? Because Israel at home is having to defend its territory from Islamist terrorists. Okay, but again, another example of Israel being marginalized. But the big story in this is that Israel's candidate, the singer, has had to change the lyrics to the song twice. Edin Golan will be representing the country, and her original song, October Rain, was thought to reference the Hamas attacks of 7th of October. October Rain. That was the name of the song. And I have the lyrics here. The lyrics are, they were all good children, every one of them. Who told you boys don't cry? Hours and hours and flowers. Life is not a game for the cowards. Those were the lyrics, and they were deemed to be a reference to the October 7th attack, which, even if they were the case, okay, and I think October Rain is a reference to the attacks, it's not advocating anything other than standing in solidarity for the victims of the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust.
That's not political, in my opinion.
It's not political. Now, they submitted a second song. This is to like the board of Eurovision. They submitted a second song, which was titled "Dancing Forever," and that was believed to be in reference to, the festival, which was the target of the Hamas attack of the 7th of October, and it was thought that was an expression of remembrance and resilience to all those young people who lost their lives in that terror attack, Dancing Forever. That was also refused. So they went back to the song October Rain, and they have renamed it Hurricane.
Right.
And they've accepted it.
Now,
Eurovision has often been accused of being political, both in countries voting for their allies and other countries which have sort of had songs reference to being against war and things like that. Last year there was a song by Switzerland called Water Guns, and that was a song which was anti-war. I have the lyrics here. When we were boys, we played pretend, army tanks and army men. And it goes on, I don't want to be a soldier. I don't want to have to play with real blood. We ain't playing now. No water guns, no. And it's sort of, the theme of it is that it would be better if we lived in a world where there were water guns instead of real guns. Well, I think we would all love to live in a world where it was, the only need was water guns, right? So actually the message is, I can stand with that message of, a world of peace, But Israel's song nomination was, in fact, no different to that.
Well, I think it was less political than that, in a way.
Well, I don't even think. I mean, it was a
because I would say
peace. Would you agree?
I mean, that was but that would be linked with like anti-war campaign and things like there's. I think that's more political and it was allowed than Israel's one, which was mourning the death of innocent civilians.
Exactly.
It's just
so
ridiculous.
it's not an exact comparison, but I just thought I'd give that example.
Yeah.
Because...
So I think it's shameful, really. It is a case of, I think, the Eurovision panel or whoever it is being too heavy-handed with Israel on something that they should be. I don't think they should be, stopped from mourning the dead, and I don't think it's political to do that.
No.
But I think because of this anti-Israel sentiment that is there, because Israel existing is now a political issue, it's that sort of thing where, more and more we're seeing this happen. I think there's been a few countries actually calling for Israel to be banned this year, including Ireland and Iceland.
Yes.
And so, they clearly don't want that to happen. And some people may be thinking, well, why are we talking about Eurovision? It's not the most Christian thing in the world and the rest of it. Well, Eurovision is probably the largest song contest in the world. It has hundreds of millions of people that watch it. It's very influential. If Israel was banned from that, I think it would send, it would be a big thing. I think you might find during Eurovision there may be a protest or people putting up Palestinian flags or anything like that. And so I think there is going to be a lot of talk about it this year from our perspective as being people who are pro-Israel.
And that all feeds also into public opinion.
Yeah.
Because what isn't being articulated is that song, which was refused, was, as you say, it was in remembrance of the terrorist attacks in which 1,200 Jews were murdered.
Yeah.
And it's not it wasn't political
in
any way whatsoever. No. And yet the opposition, they're not actually concerned about it being political or not. They're concerned simply because they are anti-Israel. They just do not want Israel to be included, full stop.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's the truth.
That's the problem. And I think as well, just a side note, one of the reasons why Israel isn't in, for example, the reason it's in Eurovision is because it's the European broadcasting. I think that's how they get around the rules. So the main reason for that is because Israel is rejected by the Middle East. So, for example, Israel, when it plays football, it plays in the European leagues. In the when it's qualifying for the World Cup, it plays all the European clubs, not the Middle Eastern clubs or the Asian clubs, because they don't want to play with Israel. So they have kicked it out.
That's right. So it has to find a home in the European.
Yeah, and that's why. And so it's discrimination that's actually caused Israel to be in Eurovision in the first place. So
yeah. Now, closer to home, in Hackney, London, the largest public showing of the live event, the Eurovision Song Contest final, the venue has actually cancelled the whole event because of Israel's participation. So Rio Cinema in East London, actually founded in 1909 by a Jewish businesswoman, today has decided that they're not going to be screening it. As I say, it's the largest Eurovision party in London, but Israel's participation is enough for them to scrap it.
Yeah, crazy.
So again, you see how something with, I know we're talking about Eurovision and we may or may not be interested in the song contest, or we may have some views about the song contest, but all of these are trends within contemporary society, within the music industry in this case, in terms of the entertainment industry, where Israel is being marginalized, demonized. And so that's why it's actually important to be aware of it, because here in London, that venue has made a decision which, is wrong. But it's important that, we're aware of these things, because it just doesn't stop there. It has the potential to have a much wider impact in other organizations, also questioning whether or not they are right to do something that might in some way involve Israel.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, it goes back to the BDS campaign, boycott, divestment and sanctions. It is that attempt to wipe Israel out of everything, wipe it out of our supermarkets by stopping products going there, wipe it out from Eurovision. And the ultimate aim is to wipe Israel out entirely. And so it is all, in my opinion, it's an anti-Semitic movement. people who are supporting this are getting involved in something which they shouldn't be dabbling in, because God will bless those who bless you and God will curse those who curse you, and that includes how you treat Israel around Eurovision. It's like, it's as simple as that to me. It's like, this is part of the spiritual battle that the Jewish people are in, that we as Christians are in, that Israel is in. It's good versus evil. In my opinion, there's no two ways about it.
Yeah. And I mean, there are other venues. So again, this week there was a story of King's College University that has had to cancel an event over death threats towards one of its visiting panelists. They were holding an event which, ironically, was about conflict resolution, right? Conflict resolution.
Yeah.
One of the speakers was a British-Israeli graduate who was on this panel. He received death threats because he was once part of the IDF. He served in the IDF at one time. And on that basis, he received death threats. The universities had to cancel the whole event.
Right. Yeah. And with that, on the flip side of that, there was a report that a few weeks ago, there was a university hosting the former Palestinian terrorist Layla Khalid.
Right, yeah.
And it's like the flip side on that is like they welcome terrorists and yet they reject former Israeli soldiers. And by the way, Israel has conscription, which means the vast, vast majority of adults in Israel have served in the IDF. Some of them could have just been in there for 2 years. Some of them may not have even been involved in any combat. They might have been serving as drivers or engineers or technicians.
Either way.
All these different things. Because it's part of the country. What I'm saying is they can use that excuse against every adult Israeli.
Yeah. Well, they use that excuse against Gal Gadot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the actress, Hollywood actress, who has been at the receiving end of lots of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Because she's Jewish, Israeli, and because she's served in the IDF.
Yeah, and Gal Gadot, if anyone doesn't know, is Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And she's been in the Fast and the Furious movies, lots of different things. Very famous. She's under attack for that.
Well, last week she gave birth to her fourth child, posted an image on Instagram, really happy and pleased with her newborn baby in her arms.
Yeah.
And she received a flood of comments from people saying things such as, "But what about babies in Gaza?"
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I know. And then that sparked headlines with people slamming her for having a baby.
Yes.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, she is currently living in the USA. She's a movie star. Obviously, she has her heart is,
But what is the mindset that you should attack a new mother, okay, for having a baby when there are babies in the midst of a conflict in Gaza? I mean, how do you even come to that? But I mean, I'm not just picking out just one. Like, this was a number of people who were making
comments,
this accusation. That's appalling.
Yeah.
But it just, again, it reminds us, this whole conversation on this podcast is about just the terrible anti-Semitic mindset, spirit that is against the Jewish people, which actually uses a number of ways, a number of mechanisms to try and undermine and demonize Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And we've looked at a few of those.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of these stories are not big stories. But look, if this is the tip of the iceberg, then look, we have got to tackle anti-Semitism head on.
Yeah, exactly. And as Pastor Hagee said, CUFI, Christians United for Israel, we are at war with anti-Semitism. We do not tolerate anti-Semitism in any way, shape or form. And I think, the fact that you couldn't even comprehend why people would be attacking someone for having a baby, the same thing with the children. How could anyone, abuse a 9-year-old kid with a blood disorder simply because he's Jewish? It is incomprehensible.
And one way in which we address it is to not try and understand the we have to identify the evil,
Yeah.
but we don't have to try and rationalize the
No.
evil. We have to understand the truth.
Yeah.
We have to understand what is right.
Yep.
As Christians, we have the Bible as a guide,
Yep.
which is the very thing which is what helps us to understand, what is right, what God says about the Jewish people, what God says about loving the Jewish people, and about anti-Semitism, and about our love towards Israel. We have to really invest ourselves in that, because the more we invest ourselves in knowing what is right, what is the truth, what is good, what's acceptable, then actually the more we are able to highlight it, and the stronger we will be in being able to call it out, and the more confident and courageous, because we do have to be courageous. Okay, I think of those those parents, okay, who made the decision to stand with that one Jewish parent in that under-8s football team.
That was courageous.
Bring the children home.
Yeah.
Okay. Forfeit the match. They shouldn't have had to forfeit the match, by the way.
No.
They should have got all the points for that match. But anyway, that's another point. That's a technical point, but it's true.
Yep.
Okay. But sometimes you have to make a courageous stand. Are you prepared, okay, to withdraw your child from something that goes against your values?
Yeah.
Are you prepared to make a public stand with another, in this case, parent, okay, another human being, a Jewish person? Are you prepared to identify with their problem, with their challenge, and say, do you know what? Your fight is our fight. Your battle is our battle.
Yep.
We will face the same repercussions as you will face.
Yep.
If you are too fearful to hide your Star of David, okay, we are going to stand with you, so that if you are persecuted for that, then we will stand with you in that persecution.
Yeah. Amen. I think that's great. And it's a challenge to us, because there are examples where, Christians have actually said, well, if you're too scared to wear a Star of David, I'll wear a Star of David as well. There was a campaign a few years back where there was anti-Semitism against Jews in Germany, and then everyone started wearing kippahs to say we're all Jews, And if you're against us, if you're against them, then you're against us. And it's a common saying we have here: if there is a line that needs to be drawn, you draw it around Christians and Jews. Christians are here to stand with Israel and, the Jewish people everywhere in the world. We will stand with Jews in London. We will stand with Jews in Israel. We stand with Jews everywhere, because that is what we are called to do. God said, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. And so we believe that fully. We believe that wholeheartedly. And so this is a call to all of you. If you do want to stand with the Jewish people, you may not have the confidence to go out there boldly, but you can at least support Christians United for Israel, support the work we're doing as we stand with the Jewish people, as we proclaim the truth of God's word to the public, and we tackle this in the public sphere. So if you do want to get your wristband, Israel Lives, and wear it proudly, then please do make a donation using the special link in the description below or on your screen right now. But also, we want to equip you. So we want you to know the truth. And we have developed the Torch magazine, which we have here. And we're actually going to play a quick advert at the end of this video. But Alastair, it's been a great podcast. And it's a sad podcast, really, because we're talking about so many of these things of anti-Semitism and discrimination, but it just shows us that what we're doing here is so important, and it is for such a time as this.
Absolutely. And why it's so important that we have people who stand with us, and that's why the support which we receive is so appreciated.
Definitely.
And if you're listening, watching this, you think you might be alone, you're not.
You're not.
You are not. Yep. You're in good company.
Yep.
So thank you very much for listening, watching. Please do like and share this podcast, comment, and also subscribe to make the truth known. But until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. God bless. The latest issue of Torch magazine from Christians United for Israel UK is out now. Arm yourself with the truth about Israel with this free magazine, available to read online instantly or received by post if you live in the UK. In this issue, we describe the horrific events of 7th of October, when Hamas invaded Israel and massacred Jews, and why it is vital we bear witness of the evil anti-Semitism that was committed on that tragic day. We also explain the rise in anti-Semitism here in Britain and how Christians must respond. Plus, we look at whether the so-called two-state solution is actually a two-state delusion. Our magazine is packed with important facts to help you stand with Israel, but it also includes articles to encourage and inspire, such as the incredible story behind Israel's national emblem and its link to the Arch of Titus, plus what God says about the land he promised to the Jewish people. Get your copy today by going to cufi.org.uk/torch.